as the entire lesson, they probably wouldn't grasp a ton because the context isn't there. And vice versa, when you have a traditional lecture, there's no way to really experience and appreciate firsthand what we're actually talking about. And so in our project, when students were actually able to literally see the difference between visual systems and how they weren't able to do certain things like navigate around an environment or perform certain activities, in human vision, when they switch, they're actually able to, the lesson sort of kicks in at that point. What they learned about adaptation in the regular classroom now comes in and becomes a lot more impactful for them personally.
Very nice. Thank you, everyone, for a fascinating panel. Sorry about some of the tech glitches, but I think we made it. And I'll hand things over to Barbara, who is going to lead the final panel.
Thanks, Mark, and welcome everybody to the fourth and last session of this lightning round event. I'm Barbara Knauf from Dartmouth. I'm Associate Director for Academic Technology and Consulting. And our first presenter is Monica Wyatt-Nunduno. Are you there, Monica?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. And Monica will be speaking about breaking new ground in Black theater and tech. So take it away, Monica.
Thank you. So I'm just going to try to share my screen. Okay. So hopefully that's visible to everyone. So yeah, the project that I'm working on is Breaking New Ground in Black Theater and Tech. And it's really designed to explore Black cultural storytelling through VR. And so one of the things that inspired the project, I actually started thinking through this at least 2 years ago when I hosted the International Black Theater Summit. And it was really the converging pandemics of COVID-19 and racial injustice that inspired me to accelerate my planning around the project that I had in mind. And so part of it was really thinking about specifically how can we use VR to assist with remote teaching and learning in theater and also possibly theatrical productions. So some of the general problems that we face in this particular area is Black theaters tend to serve a critical function in American society, but we are perpetually underfunded, which makes it difficult to explore the use of new technologies. Black artists that generally want to explore Black theater at the intersection of new technologies often have to work in predominantly white institutions that aren't often either equipped or prepared to engage with the culture. And so that can also create different challenges. And additionally, theater programs are not funded in the same way that labs and other disciplines are funded. And so we don't typically get the resources to be able to play around with this technology unless we strategically collaborate with other disciplines. And other problems deal with the difficulties of teaching, acting, directing, and other sensitive material that's often better taught in an in-person environment where we can build community and build ensembles. So some of the solutions that I believe VR can offer in regards to thinking about Black story and VR as an effective tool for resolving a range of problems and also inspiring racial empathy and human interaction on and off stage. And so in some of my research, I found studies that looked at the ways in which the use of avatars created or using Black avatars in certain situations tended to create empathy in the user. And so I want to explore what that means by staging Black theater in VR. And additionally, this project, I believe, can model a path forward during and beyond the pandemic, because it may offer opportunities to really start to think about how we can use the technology to get artists back to work, to help develop the technology, but also to continue to practice the art form. So some of the solutions that we're proposing through the project, we're custom building a multi-user platform with the hope of being able to have globally representative avatars in order to try to stage Black theater in VR. And so part of that involves building a virtual theater, building a stage within that theater, using Black theater texts as inspiration, as a way of modeling a safe space for Black cultural storytelling in a virtual environment. So for the summer and fall, again, we really just started building this. For the summer and fall, we are planning to try to build the virtual stage with 2 to 3 avatars within Facebook Horizons, as well as in a custom-built multi-user platform. Our goal is to be able to produce a short scene from a play to demonstrate some of the basic features of our custom-built platform, and also to test some of the features within Horizon. And again, like I said, we're still in the very early stages, and within the next couple of weeks, we hope to have at least some 3D models and some of the avatars, audio, and the interaction between avatars to be able to test that. So in terms of the implications for teaching, so I have a larger idea for this project that really extends beyond the classroom. But again, I'm hoping that the first version of this that we create will reveal the potential for VR in the classroom and theater classrooms specifically, in terms of the ways we teach acting, directing, but also cultural studies. Because again, with some of the things that I teach, I'm dealing with a lot of very sensitive subject matter. Again, it makes it a lot easier to teach that material when we're in person. So we want to look at specifically how it works for acting and directing now, but then to start plotting out the ways in which it can be introduced in design tech and live theater practice. And also I'm exploring opportunities for interdisciplinary teaching and learning, because even working with my team, I'm finding that there's a certain way in which sharing information with them from my field of study and their area of expertise can create a whole new opportunity for learning, specifically in terms of thinking about the technology at the intersection of race and culture. And so some of the basic challenges we're facing right now is just really trying to cultivate the look and feel of the custom-built platform to meet the needs of Black storytelling, in hopes of our discoveries also helping to evolve the tech. And some of the speakers earlier have already talked about some of the limitations of the technology. It's my belief that if we introduce actors and artists into this area, that it could actually speed up the development of the technology.
Okay, so we're at time, Monica. Maybe we can take up some of these challenges in the Q&A session at the end?
Yeah, this was my last slide. So
okay, great, perfect.
Cost prohibitive and accessibility are some of the issues I want to think about.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So our next presentation is from the University of Illinois, Project Komodo by Robert Wallace and some colleagues. Robert, are you there?
So, hi, this is Brandon on behalf of Robert.
Okay, all right. Well, hello, Brandon. And we look forward to hearing from you for 5 minutes about Project Komodo.
Great. Originally, I was going to have my colleague Alex speak for the first minute, but I think to keep things simple, I'll just go ahead and open. So I will share my screen. Can you see these slides?
Yes.
All right. My apologies to Alex. But yes, we are Project Komodo. We are a initiative to make browser-based VR instruction much more available to instructors and students. Thank you for having us for this presentation. So we're a VR teaching and learning platform with an emphasis on social VR, being able to launch on any 6 degree of freedom headset from your browser, and to have custom content. Those are our main pillars, and then we've also are exploring the possibilities of having data-driven pedagogy and analysis, session recording, making things available through a web portal, and having voice and video relay, and then of course making accessibility a first-class item. So during Q&A, I suppose we would be able to go into more detail with this, but we have received a lot of grants from our VR at Illinois initiative for instructors to create content, and you can see, hopefully you can read the number of grants here. They span many different disciplines, and we thought about this and we said, all right, we could take our studio and make these experiences for them one at a time, or we can try and identify what they have in common. So that was this previous slide here, that these tools would help a lot. So our technologies underneath this that we decided on were Unity with the Mozilla WebXR exporter, and a bunch of other tools. We decided to use these in particular because, again, these instructors wanted a lot of really custom functionality. So a game engine made sense. And then we chose Unity because our campus historically has been very familiar with Unity. And we actually have a virtual reality class that develops with Unity as well too. So we're hoping that this enables a lot of researchers and student developers to create awesome applications. So we're triangulating between a lot of groups that I've mentioned already. One example that we do have that we're working on deploying for this fall is a fashion illustration critique module. So Professor Chiara Vincenzi here has done an amazing job of piloting garment creation in Tilt Brush. So this saves on a lot of, it prevents a lot of waste from happening. The only problem is then you can't review this with other students unless you take off the headset and put it on someone else. So we thought, why not create an interactive room where you can join other students and review other garments. Another example is material science here. So I don't really have time to explain what exactly is going on in this image, but basically one interesting fact is that it's actually really important for us to be able to take these metal cubes here and intersect them directly with these spherical atoms. So in VR, you can do interesting things like this, like turn off gravity and turn off object collision. And that actually opens up a lot of interesting possibilities. And that's another reason why we wanted to go very domain specific and get down to the core of Unity and let people upload custom modules with custom programming on top of that as well too. So we're hoping to provide runtime imports, like with the dresses, real-time voice and video chat, which is something that we added during COVID-19. And then we've always had social VR avatar presence and data analytics as well too. So we will pilot and see how well this works. We have seen that instructors, as well as our virtual reality professors, have gotten excited about the possibility of just building something and uploading it to the web. This saves on a lot of deployment time, and will hopefully allow as well students from virtual reality to the virtual reality course at Illinois to be able to actually preserve their work over time. Here's just an example of an electrical and computer engineering course that used student content from the virtual reality course. Yes, I've mentioned a couple of these items already, but there is just one small story that I like to finish with, which I hope is all right, which is that early in development, we had this strange bug, which was that the floor height was much too low. And it was actually kind of scary to be able to see objects down below, but never be able to reach them because I couldn't break through my own floor. And during this moment, I made a connection to a time that my professor was putting on the VR headset and was stuck at her table. She didn't have room to use her Guardian. So in thinking about accessibility being first class, that was a real moment of empathy for me, where I was like, oh, if I did not have room to bend over and reach something on the floor at a table, it feels kind of like you can never reach that thing. And the solution that the professor ended up coming up with, we didn't even realize, was to just scale down the dress, because she was able to reach it, but that way she was able to gesture the whole thing. So there's creativity in your own users in being able to find that accessibility, and then, of course, any even accidental opportunity to empathize, you should take that. And sorry for going a little bit over time, but please do email us at idealab@library.illinois.edu with the subject Beyond Zoom demo. We would totally love to show you what the actual content of our platform is. Thank you so much.
All right, great. Thank you, Brandon. On to the next presentation, Teaching VR Art and Design in VR by Steve Geinup and some colleagues. Steve, are you there?
I'll get him. He's under a different name here, so I'll get that.
Okay, shall we jump to the next presentation?
No, I think we're okay.
Okay.
You can hear that, right?
Yes.
Hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. And did I actually? Okay, are you seeing my virtual world?
We are. All right, take it away for your 5 minutes.
Awesome. Great. This is my virtual classroom, Teach VR Art and Design, with students from the University of Moscow, Idaho, and my friend Brian Cleveley. In the disc are my students' virtual artwork. Now, I've been here 25 years. I got my start doing virtual poetry. And in 2010, I was asked to chair the Web3D art gallery at SIGGRAPH, and saw the opportunity to, well, share with my colleagues, my peers, and my students the art and design history of virtual reality, because it just doesn't get told enough.
So did we just lose Steve?
Yeah, it looks like we lost Steve.
All right.
Oh, and he's back.
Okay.
Yeah, we're having a difficult connection from Steve. Brian can be heard okay. Try and fix this.
Is that, can you hear me now?
We can.
All right, I am sorry. I have a very rural internet connection. Okay, VR poetry, yada, yada, yada. Now, here's the thing. What's the difference between an art installation and an educational installation? There's not much. And if you buy into that you can connect art as sharing knowledge and ideas, much like educational work can, then what about poetry? A series of institutions could be very helpful to people who are trying to be creative. We live in a world that's becoming much more and more virtual, but we're not really able to exploit it. we still have people who are building virtual classrooms that look like this, putting students in desks and chairs. And that's just sad and wrong. So again, I build virtual installations to teach various subjects in addition to art and design, although I've got some shampoo bottle and lighting things in the background. So these are all installations that I put in my classroom.
Looks like we have lost our speaker again. So I think at this point we should move to the next presentation, and Jim, maybe you can work out behind the scene how we can shore up this connection. Does that make sense?
It does. I know Brian is attached here. If he could finish the presentation, or we can go back and find Steve and see if we can get that working. It is a network issue, so I don't know if we're going to be able to.
Right.
I would suggest let's connect with Steve. He's got all the content on his system,
He does.
and that probably would be the best solution.
Okay.
All right. So let's skip one presentation though and come back to this one. Jim?
Yeah, that sounds good. I think James Mahoney's up next.
That's right. So James Mahoney from Dartmouth College will be talking about a remote XR class that he taught at Dartmouth in the spring of 2020. James, are you there?
I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And James, can we confirm that that is indeed your screen share that we're seeing right now?
That is
via
not my screen share. I'm trying to share it right now.
Okay. We may have to get word to Steve that. Okay, there it goes.
Okay, there we are. Good.
Okay, so I teach digital arts in the computer science department at Dartmouth, and but I have a degree in architecture from Cornell University. But for the past 35 years, I've been designing and building and researching virtual environments and avatar technology. At Dartmouth, I teach a class to design and build augmented and virtual experiences, and it's a hands-on, projects-based class. But the really unique thing about it is that it's really two classes in one. Half the students are designers and they know 3D modeling in Maya, and the other half of the students are coders, and they work collaboratively together to produce a whole bunch of different exercises and projects. For their final projects, the students did some really cool stuff this last term, and actually I'll drop a link into the chat if you want to see it. It's a fairly long video. And actually, let me just I can give you just a peek of it. Students did all kinds of different projects. Many of them did games. They did all kinds of different things. I'll just show you just a little bit. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can you hear it?
Mm-hmm.
This was a game where they created all these environments and you had an image and you would try to find where that image was generated from. Another one that had a bunch of different physical puzzles that you had to solve by shooting arrows. And if you follow that link, you can see a lot more. So what we really focus on is just these following things. Environments, which includes designing, lighting, materials, rendering, interactivity, first-time user experiences, user interfaces, those kinds of things, animation, locomotion, and whatnot. But in this last term, spring 2020, it was only the third time teaching this class. And I challenged the students during the COVID era to see if we could build a multi-user environment for our class to use, and specifically to build a hub of portals to all the student projects. And one team, one of the groups in this class was able to create a working prototype of a collaborative art studio in VR. And I'd like to show you that as well. Let's see. So it's a little hard to see what's going on here in this video, These cubes are the avatars. They're very simple, but they built an art studio. They built an entire space. And I think if I come down here a little further, but what you can see is that when one person, these are two different people. The one person on the left is one person, the person on the right is another person, and they would share these boards, and they would do artwork on the boards, and you would see it appear in the other one. And so they built this from scratch. They built this themselves. Yeah, so these are the students. It was just 2 designers and 2 coders that did that, and they did it in about 3.5 weeks during the class. So building on that, I worked with one of the TAs named Justin Lowe, and we worked together to integrate that technology into an environment that I was calling the Henge. And the idea being that in the future, in terms of teaching this class, the entire class will meet in this VR hub space. And then together we can move through these different portals and view each other's work. And they could also have, demonstrations and other things in there as well. And so at the very last day of class, we finally pulled it all together, and we had the last class in this space all together. And it was really, really fun. And definitely not social distancing in there, I can see. But it's way, way more interesting than you might guess when you're all in there together. So we showed this to work to some of our friends at Facebook, Oculus, and they were motivated to support our efforts, and they gave us a generous gift to the university to help create a multi-user lab or a test bed environment to study technology to promote natural and comfortable social interaction and collaboration in VR. So let me introduce you to this new project, and I'm calling it Silver, a social interaction lab VR. And I can just show you just a little bit of, we don't have a whole lot of time.
James, we're at 5 minutes, so if you could move towards wrapping it up, that would be great.
Okay, I'll just show you a couple images, and I won't show you the video. Maybe I can put a link to the video. So this is the environment, and the main thing is that it has an entry sequence, and it has this promenade for navigation and social interaction. And it has a collection of nodes. Each of these would be links that would go out to different student projects. And these are my TAs that did a lot of work helping me out. That Justin Lau is the one who did most of the networking and all of that work. Anyway, so that's, I'll put a link to the video, and that's pretty much it.
Great, thank you so much, James.
Sure.
Jim, how are we doing on our prior presentation?
Steve reports that he's definitely having network issues today. I asked him if he would like to try again, and he says yes, so let's give it a shot.
All right, let's give it one last try for teaching VR and design in VR.
World of internet. Still problems?
It wasn't
okay?
good, Steve, but we're seeing your images, and as long as there's nothing else open on your laptop, we might give it a try here for a minute or two.
All right. It's so much more dynamic when you do a live demo and actually show the spaces becoming other spaces. I was talking about poetry and installations. So what I actually do is people just share 2D images in VR, which just astonishes me. I take entire environments and installations and drop them in front of my students. And per the poetry metaphor from earlier, we move through the space and tell a story and learn. And in this particular image, this is an art gallery where I'm talking about art galleries and their design. It's a beautiful art gallery, but my problem is with the name, the Art Gallery of the Future. This is one of the first DK1 works. And like classrooms that we have today, I mean, it'd be hard-pressed to call the Gallery of the Future, even though it is beautiful. And that brings up questions from, how do we get past this? How can we create reality if you don't even know why you copy it? And there are lessons from game design briefly, reality is not a goal. Realism is not a goal. Use reality, use realism as a tool to create behavior for your users. How do you do that? What does that mean? Well, in this image, I've got all these old virtual art galleries. And these are people exploring what virtual art galleries be. And it's kind of overwhelming, the potential of this medium. There's so much potential and possibility. But we can take some lessons from early cinema. Filmmaking. Film was actually seen as VR at the very start, and they had to learn that language. And it started with composition. How do you compose a moving image? Now it becomes, how do you compose a virtual space? The other part that's hidden is editing reality. How do you edit and cut it apart and make those pieces work for you? It leads you into some very creative conceptual spaces. And art galleries are a wonderful way to get to that point. This is Chow Fei's R&B City, and it's an art gallery. A lot of her work is here, but it's a mashup of a city and a toy box and an art gallery. And those of you just look outside your windows and think about your city as an art gallery. So much potential for where to show work. There's a big stadium or a small space, hidden up on a rooftop. So the ability to mash up the narratives, borrow cognition from the city, and put that into the design of your gallery is just brilliant. To do that in your art space, in your classroom, again, useful. This is virtual Guggenheim, and it's a shape-shifting space. The funny thing here is that it's a mashup of a body and a gallery. It's very organic in that respect. By body, what I mean is there are tubes that run through and morph and shapeshift, but in those tubes are cells that are actually rooms. So you actually flow through the gallery, through these individual rooms. Now, the rebellion against physical architecture, I buy, but the problems that it solves are kind of interesting, because every gallery, every room is separate and individual. So you could have a universe in one space and a couple of paintings in another. And those of us that are trying to create educational presentations know just how much scale can get, can be a problem for us. So how do you break apart our designs? How do we then compose them? How do we archive? How do we curate? And that's the word I was looking for in this. So there's lots of lessons we can get to through the study of art galleries, through the study of a lot of amazing work in our history. And this gallery work just continues. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but thank you. I will post some links in the thread. And if you want to see a live demo and it actually working, please get back to me. Also, I am looking for opportunities. So if you need help with something, want to demo, want to talk, need some design ideas, please contact me. I'll post that in the link. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Steve. I'm certainly sympathetic to the bandwidth questions or issues, because we have those as well in the Dartmouth area. So our next presentation is from Jill Ellern, who is Assistant Librarian at Western Carolina University, and she will be talking about making a case for the role of your library in your XR projects.
Yeah. I'm trying to, hang on a second here. No. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can see you.
Good. Hang on a second. I'm trying to have it so that it does my PowerPoint. Okay.
All right. We can see your PowerPoint.
Hopefully. And sorted.
All right. Take it away.
Okay. On my slide, you can see a picture of my VR lab at Western Carolina University Hunter Library, which I made possible. This lightning talk will focus on some of the initial results of a multi-institutional and a quantitative study about librarians in XR. We interviewed 11 librarians, or people who worked in or with libraries, about how and why they support XR, and their answers may surprise you. I want to briefly talk about the roles that libraries and librarians can and do play in VR at your institution, as well as some examples of what we discovered. Let me see if I can forward one. First and foremost, libraries see themselves as gateways, providing an entry point and access to emerging technologies for people who might not otherwise have the ability to experience it. This role is particularly relevant to support the missions of public institutions. We interviewed several librarians who have VR labs that are in the front entrance of the library. And so patrons walking in the door, they see the VR screen in action immediately. In my library, and as you can see, the patrons can walk by and see into the lab. One librarian drew from her background as a swim instructor to develop a touchless curriculum for her student workers to teach new users how to move around inside VR space. And now when those patrons enter the library, they see their students swimming in alternate spaces. Academic libraries also view themselves as learning partners, integrating emerging technology into the curriculum. Just before our university was sent home for COVID, our library obtained Oregon VR, which is a human anatomy program that you may or may not be familiar with it. Even though the library was closed to the public, I was able to work with a professor in physical therapy to create an on-demand video lesson about basal ganglia used with this VR software. As I recorded the Zoom session with screen sharing, the professor provided a voiceover and while I did the dissection. A press release of this collaboration is included in our resource kit. Our research also discovered that librarians are beginning to view themselves as content creators, whether that's developing or curating new XR objects or bringing these projects to life with 3D printing or other makerspace technologies. We talked to a public library that partnered with their city government to build a VR educational tool about coastal sustainability. They wrote a grant that was funded by a South American VR company to create this program showing the future effects of climate change on their community. And now the library patrons can witness these sea rises for themselves using the VR software that's available at their local library. As a cross-disciplinary and collaborative inclusive space, many librarians today see how XR and makerspace projects are a natural extension of their research support role. We hope we can inspire you to think about your library and librarians in planning your XR technology projects and in the future, even if your library doesn't currently have this service. To help institute these conversations, we want to share a resource kit to help optimize the support of libraries and librarians for this emerging technologies. These are library-oriented tools, budgets, policies, forms, grant ideas, even a lesson plan that will help them to integrate VR technology more quickly in the services they offer. A link to this kit is below and also in your conference schedule. Whether your library is a gateway, a learning partner, or a content creator, or all three, they can be the integral partners in bringing XR to the stakeholders across your campus. And that's all I have.
Barbara, you're muted.
Sorry. That's how it goes on Zoom. Our next, so first, thank you for the prior presentation. Our next presenter is Adam Salzdorf-Liskiewicz from Michigan State University with two colleagues. The topic is, if we had to do it again, lessons learned from teaching VR at a liberal arts college. So Adam, are you there?
Adam is not here with us. He's currently driving cross country somewhere in the middle of Wyoming, but he has left us with a presentation to present.
All right. Well, Cord, you ready to take it away with the presentation?
That I am. I'm going to mute myself so that my colleague Ian here can take the floor, and I will get this going. Thank you for bearing with us.
All right. Welcome, Ian.
Hello? Can you all hear me fine?
Yes, we can.
Cool. All right, so I'll get started first with a quick introduction to VR at Oxenon College, and then following into the meat of this discussion about the class we took with Adam. So first of all, VR at Oxenon College has always been a pretty student-run initiative. A lot of the projects and collaborations with departments were funded via funded with student-found funding, oftentimes collaborating with departments such as the Ontology Lab, also the Chinese language department, and then at different times the History and East Asian Studies department. But in particular today, I want to talk about a class that we did with Professor Sulzdorf-Luschewitz in the Media, Arts, and Cultures department. So this class was called the Art and Politics of Virtual Reality, and we spent time bringing VR to media studies students. So instead of like a creation-centric class, it was more of a class for media students to study the upcoming art in virtual reality, to study it as an emerging media and like what was going on at the time. So I'm going to start by saying like what went really well, and in particular because it was a lot of the technology was student-built or student-funded, it was limited resources to say the least. And so I want to talk about the strategies that we developed using these limited resources and how they might apply to your classrooms in a time where we're all limited access to the resources we might have. So first, like what went really well and things that we think can be applied in this new environment. So the main meat of the class was meeting with content creators in virtual reality. Luckily, Adam, through his various academic and professional contexts, knew a lot of different people in the field. Shown here is Mr. Steve Anderson. He actually works at the UCLA and runs the UCLA Media Arts Lab, and in particular the XR initiative. So he had various different projects, also projects he's collaborated on throughout the years, the history of VR, the different kinds of mediums that were used in VR. And he was there. He got to talk to us. He got to show what he was working on. We also had an artist by the name of Paisley Smith, who ran we hosted one of her pieces called Homestay VR, something that was very powerful and like a lot of people really enjoyed seeing. So in essence, if you are teaching VR in a media capacity, like it's good to know the creators. And it's good to have the creators speaking. It's good to read what the creators have written. And it seems to transfer to Zoom fairly well. Next, we were exploring a lot of the developments in VR. It wasn't just like what headsets we're using now, but also the methodology behind designing those headsets and where the headsets came from. We looked at a bunch of other, older devices, such as the Cave was a favorite. And not that we had access to a Cave, but we looked at what was done with the Cave and other sorts of technologies that led up to the point we're at now. And I think that history lesson, like, because you have such limited access to those sorts of resources, it can be done also via Zoom. It can be done using old archive footage, also using just like articles about those different technologies as they've fallen by the wayside. And that part of the class, which was very successful, can still be done. Finally, we focused on a lot of performative play. There were a lot of situations where, because we didn't have these too many headsets, we had a total of 2 HTC Vives and 2 Oculus Rifts at the maximum. So oftentimes we had to share headsets. That's not super conducive to COVID, but the point stands that we were able to pretty effectively assign times and assign places and work with our schedule in the class to make sure that everyone got to experience something in VR, whatever it was for the week. And so working on that kind of schedule, taking those different experiences and getting different people into the same piece of technology while not making sense right now was a really good way to get that class moving forward. So there were some things that didn't go quite well, and they also carry over into this COVID environment too. So I'm going to send it to Cord to talk about those.
Okay, let's see. I should be back here. Before we move on, performative playing, one of the joys of that was being able to interact with students who couldn't be in the headset themselves. They could still have a more interactive experience by talking to the player than if they were to just watch a video. They could say stuff like, what happens if you try to pick up that thing? Or can you go over there? And they could do that. And we feel this could be something that could be live streamed to students at home during COVID, so that they can have a bit more of a interactive experience than if they were to just have to watch. Now, onto the things that sadly did not go as well. One thing that was difficult was, one thing that would be difficult to recreate outside of the classroom environment was the gallery style environments we were able to create. We had a lot of situations where we would be able to bring out all 4 of our little headsets and just let people wander around in a big space with creators, so that these natural little conversation bubbles would form between students and faculty and other folks. Then when we would come back together as a larger class, people would take what they learned from these smaller groups and share it with the entirety of the class. And that's something that would be a bit difficult for me to try and think of a way to adapt it for at home, but it could be possible if you're able to split your students up into groups like that so that they can have their own moments of discovery to share back. Another thing that would be difficult to bring back would be hands-on tutorialization. As a lot of you may be experienced with, a lot of VR is not very user-friendly. A lot of the design language is still being learned, especially the language of teaching people how to use VR with VR is just a lot to be found out through there. So it was very important for us to be able to guide students hands-on, saying, oh yeah, make sure your hands are on this button, you're holding the controller like this, please, please, please put the safety strap on if it's going to be intense. All these little things that would just potentially get them into situations where they would be too frustrated to really engage with the piece. We were able to get around it. You can see in this photo here, that man has 2 fingers on one trigger as well, I'm realizing just now. So even then it's not perfect in person, but it would be difficult to try and recreate at home. And the last thing would be how to emotionally and physically support students in VR. It's a very different medium in a lot of ways. It's much less inclusive than something like film. Situations where we had students with different physical abilities, like trouble walking, trying to figure out how to accommodate, even in person, we had difficulty with that because a lot of this VR is built under the assumptions that everyone has legs and arms that work the same way and eyes and ears and everything. So trying to find our way through that in person was difficult. And even on the emotional side as well, we had one day where we were just showing off little 360 horror films thinking, oh yeah, horror in VR would be something fun to talk about. And we as coordinators were thinking, yeah, these are all kind of cheesy. We don't have to worry too much about it. I don't think anyone's going to be disturbed. But unfortunately, we had a brilliant artist student. They were triggered by one of the pieces about a mental hospital, and none of us expected it and didn't really know how to emotionally support them even there in that moment, trying to ask, saying, hey, are you okay? How can we do this? Having those important moments of realization on our part that we need to watch out for this. If we were to do that at home, they might not have been in a situation where they felt comfortable even bringing that up. And we would have sort of left them on their own in that way. So that's something we would definitely advise people watch out for if they're trying to teach VR from a distance like we are with COVID here.
All right.
Yeah.
That's actually a great point to end on. I think that emotional support for students in a remote setting. Thank you so much, Cord and Ian.
Thank you.
Let's move to our last presentation, VR and Participatory Design Research, a New Paradigm, by MF Chang from the Ohio State University.
Hello, everyone. Yep, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, let me just pull it up. And can you see the slides?
We can. So take it away. Your 5 minutes are starting.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Muhammad Fakhruddin Yang Chen. In short, I go by Yang. I am a design researcher and a third-year design research and development MFA student at the Ohio State University. Today, I'll be presenting about co-immersive creation, or CIC, which is a new approach developed for co-design or participatory design research. First, some background and context. Co-design or participatory design is an approach and mindset within design that includes stakeholders as part of the design process. So for example, traditionally designers would design for, but in co-design, designers would design with stakeholders or sometimes by stakeholders. For this project, our aim was to reduce sleep deprivation and delirium in ICU patients. My team and I collaborated with the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center Intensive Care Unit, and our stakeholders included ex-ICU patients, family members, and medical staff. Co-immersive creation was developed in session 3 of our project with information and analysis gathered from sessions 1 and 2. Session 3 was set up for the prototyping of different possibilities in the ICU room to help reduce sleep deprivation and delirium for patients. Currently, if such an activity were to be carried out, there are a couple of options. Here on the left, we see the example of a dollhouse where co-design participants would prototype with miniature shapes and objects. This approach can be portable, easy to set up, and repeatable for multiple consecutive sessions. However, the small scale can lead to lack of spatial awareness, which can pose some issues. On the right here, we have the Velcro room. This approach has the advantage of being present in a simulated environment in real scale. Actual objects can also be used as prototypes. However, the approach is resource heavy. It takes a lot of preparation and time, and it's not easy to repeat this for multiple consecutive sessions. Our initial setup was developed as an approach where it involves one researcher and one participant to be both in the VR ICU room, prototyping synchronously. This setup is based upon my own research, which is the development of the VR collaborative sandbox, as you can see there on the right. This changed after the stay-home orders of COVID. We did not want to abandon our plan, so instead we made some modifications for our setup. This is when the new novel approach of co-immersive creation was discovered. In CIC, we streamed the VR feed via Zoom remotely to our participants and included an additional researcher in VR, assuming the position of the participant's VR representative, being their eyes, ears, and hands, and taking instructions from the participant. Some outcomes of CIC, the main theme that emerged was the research took less time and gained richer insights. The benefits were not only from the results from the session, but is the discovery of CIC itself. Bridging VR to Zoom eliminated issues such as motion sickness, safety concerns, and the need to introduce and train participants in VR. Coding the session showed that our participants experienced a certain level of presence in their environments, with one of them even commenting, "It feels like I am actually there." And this participant was connected via Zoom on their iPhone. There you can see a photo of the session at the beginning of the session before any prototyping began. Other than that, the VR collaborative sandbox gave us the affordance of versatility that was not possible in previous approaches, such as real-time changing of colors, lighting, and generating new objects. As you can see here with the images of what the ICU rooms looked like by the end of the session. CIC allowed us to conduct multiple consecutive sessions with ease just by duplicating the main initial room. Documentation and analysis were enhanced as we did not only have video and audio capture of the session, but also we had the safe prototype VR environment. Here's a short clip. Yep, so you can see that's during the session, some color changes. And moving on from here, myself and the team, we think that CIC during the pandemic now and even after can be used to reach valued research participants remotely out of state or out of the country. Myself, I am continuing to develop the VR collaborative sandbox, adapting it to design studio and education pedagogy. This will be presented in a paper and a conference at the end of the year. I'm also developing the co-design VR studio, which works both on PC VR and the Quest. I've extended my research to projects in non-design fields, primarily focusing on teaching and learning. And lastly, there is an upcoming presentation and paper on a framework that I developed around VR co-design and how it is changing the design process. Thank you. If you do have questions, that's my email there and my website. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Yang.
Thank you.
So, first of all, thank you to all of the presenters in this fourth session. I think we have time for a few question and answers before handing it off to John for some closing remarks. The first question I would like to bring up is actually circling back to Monica, who had ended with a mention of some challenges in her last slide. So the question is, what are the main challenges that you are looking at with a project that's still relatively in development, and how can a community such as this help you address those? Monica, are you here?
Yes, I am. I was trying to unmute.
Yeah, great.
So some of the challenges, I think, we're just looking at how to develop a look and feel for the first version that allows us to explore the use of the medium with Black storytelling in ways that we want to, but also because there's a sort of cartoonish look to it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the material that we're covering is very serious material that might be undercut by the use of the cartoonish look. But we still need a version that will allow us to demonstrate what's possible as the technology develops.
Okay. There's actually another question for you that came up, and that was, could you discuss a bit further the potential of using avatars to increase empathy across boundaries?
Yeah, so generally, even when I teach acting live and in person, there are different exercises that we do that allow the actors or the students to literally like walk in the shoes of another person. And so we want to explore what that might look like by using Black avatars. And so there's some studies that they've done in terms of gaming that looked at the use of Black avatars and creating empathy. So we want to explore that more with playtext.
Okay, great. So maybe just one more question before turning to John. And that is a question for those of you who worked with students on development projects. We're wondering how your students felt collaborating and building their environments while they were not physically connected. How did that change the dynamic? So I'm thinking of perhaps James addressing that, or anybody else who has worked with students in particular.
All right, so we had 20 students, and you know, working collaboratively, having some of the students be artists and modelers, and the other ones being coders. It was really important for them to work together, but they definitely pushed back on that. And part of it was just practicalities. I had students all around the world. I had students in Korea and India and England. So they were really saying they did not want to work in teams. So I had to restructure the class a little bit, and I gave them a little bit of latitude to do more individual projects. And then I really encouraged them for their final project to work in teams. And, you know, it was definitely a challenge. That was definitely a hard thing.
Yeah.
And the collaborative tools, I think, in Unity are not that great.
Did you use any external tools to facilitate collaboration?
We did. We used, you know, Google Documents and things like that. We used Zoom a lot. Some students tried to use Git, but they found that to be more of a problem than a help. And yeah, so that was pretty much it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there anybody else who can comment on that particular question? So I see that Andy Rodriguez would like to take that question.
Sure. So we only really briefly experienced the online portion with our students developing in augmented reality, but we did see through Tinkercad, the online 3D modeling software, and through Zoom, it did give a chance for students to talk to one another. They did take Tinkercad a lot well. They took it a lot better because they were able to interact with the same project at the same time. They were able to create a 3D model together and come up with ideas and brainstorm. But there were some challenges as well. Some of the students weren't necessarily technologically savvy, but introducing other forms such as drawings, perhaps more physical models. Some students used clay at one point to design a model to help them get started, but kind of introducing more tactile instruments alongside the digital seemed to help on our end.
Okay, great, thank you. So it is 4 o'clock, actually a minute past, so let's take it to John Bell for some closing remarks.
Hello. So give me just a moment and I will pull up a quick slide, but I promise it will not be long because I want to make sure you can all get on your way. Second, sorry. So yeah, I mean, this has been a really great day as far as I'm concerned. I hope that you think the same. I do want to pick up on something that we started the day with, actually, was trying to create some community around this. And when I say create, I mean, I know that there's a lot of existing communities out there, but it's really a question of making sure that there are ways that when we do talk to each other, there are pieces that come out of it that are persistent, right? So many of these conferences are very ephemeral. And so I do want to make sure you all know that we will be taking the presentations from today, putting them up online. We will try to go through the chat and pull out a lot of the really great resources that's in there as well. We'll send out a brief follow-up survey if you want to take a look at that. I promise it will be quick, only a couple of questions. Other than that, we will also send out the emails of the presenters if you want to connect directly with them. That will make life a little bit easier. Beyond that, though, I think that the thing that was really helpful for me today is just seeing the sort of breadth and depth of the different things that are going on. My academic training is interdisciplinary, and so looking across all these boundaries today and centering them around what you can do with the technology is a really kind of cool way of cross-cutting for me. So I want to make sure that we can continue that. I suspect that given the response, and I hope that you feel the same way, we will probably also follow up with this conference in the future as well. I do need to give a few thanks here. So first of all, to our sponsors, we got funding from the Dartmouth COVID-19 Spark Funds, as well as the DCAL, Dartmouth Center for the Advancement of Learning's Experiential Learning Initiative, and the University of Pennsylvania's Online Learning Initiative. Lots of help from the host today, ITC at Dartmouth, Newcomb Institute at Dartmouth, Film and Media Studies at Dartmouth, and at University of Pennsylvania Cinema and Media Studies and the Online Learning Initiative. Conference committee, there was a ton of work that went into doing this. So Peter, Barbara, Rebecca, Mark, thank you all. And as well as all of the people who were helping us on both the technical side, but also the research and promotional side as well. Jim, Kala, Elena, Daniel, Andrew, Shatish, and Anna, thank you very much. This was all a lot of work, and I think that we got quite a bit out of it, or at least I did. So look for those follow-ups in your email, and I will be updating the program site as well, so you'll be able to find all those resources there. But otherwise, thank you very much. Bye, everybody.